Thank you for inviting me. I have been working as a family doctor, rehabilitation doctor, and a doctor for young people for about 40 years. I've been also teaching medical students for 20 years. I have made my studies in France, and I have also been active in politics. I was 20 years a member of the City Council of Helsinki and the City Board for 4 years. I've been active in the Finnish Medical Association. I was one of the group which wrote the first ethics book in Finnish for Finnish doctors. I've been also on the board of an international journal, Ethics and Medicine. I was the chairman of the Finnish GPs Association of Helsinki for 10 years, and also for 10 years as the chairman of the Finnish Christian Doctors Association, which filled 90 years recently. And we have members, Finnish Christian Doctors, 1,250. So it's an old society which is working well. We have people from Lutheran Church, Methodist Church, and all the Christian churches. And we've been successful staying together for 90 years because we don't discuss theology. Because if you want to start an argument, you can start discussing theological problems. We want to concentrate on the problems of doctors and keep everybody in. I think this is also important in this discussion because I didn't come here to make enemies, but I came here to make friends, and I hope we'll stay friends. Even if some of the questions can touch your inner being, your worldview, so that always creates a reaction. I do a lot of lectures, and I have seen a lot of reactions also. But let us take it easy, because the United Nations has this year recommended that lectures on world views, different faith systems, and different religions should be encouraged at schools and universities. So you are doing the right thing. It's important to discuss different faiths and different religions. I myself, my background is an atheist. I was a steel-hard atheist. I thought that everything that science teaches us is the truth, and there's no discussion about it. But then I didn't have so much luck because I married a young, beautiful lady, and she was a daughter of a priest. That is very, very dangerous for an atheist. I said to her that I will never be Christian. I must die before I can become a Christian, because Christians are not intelligent people. Christians don't understand that we have evolved from a chemical soup, and science has proven it to be a fact. And I went to France to study, and my wife made a very dangerous thing. She started praying for me, which I can guarantee it produces results. So we were studying biophysics, mathematics, probability mathematics, organic chemistry, biochemistry, physiology at the university, and Montpellier University is the oldest university in the world. And I met a guy who was a Jewish biochemist named Charles Beloff. He was a Jew, and Jews are very intellectual. And this friend taught me biochemistry, which is not easy. And I must thank this Jew that I'm a doctor, because he taught me biochemistry. But he happened to be a Messianic Jew. And we became very good friends. We went to the mountains and pitched a tent and were studying biochemistry. I tried to make this Messianic Jew an atheist, but guess who won? He told me about Jesus, so that was quite interesting. And he said to me that, Pekka, now that we are studying biochemistry in the lab and have these different soups and different molecular systems, and now you can understand, can't you, that from this soup doesn't come out living cells. So I understood at the level of the brain, this is true. Nobody can today know how the primitive soup could produce cells. I don't want to go into detail, maybe later on if we have time. Another thing was that in the University of Montpellier, the anatomy professor, the honorary dean of the university, Professor Pierre Abichon, he was a Christian man. I didn't know it at the time, but he was teaching us functional anatomy. We'll soon look at the over-designing man. And he said this thing, he's at the UNESCO Institute of making artificial limbs, artificial hands, artificial feet. He said just one thing, which kind of killed me. He said, this is the most complicated instrument in the universe. It's impossible to make a robot hand which makes the same as a human hand. That's all. That was a good sermon. I have a friend, a surgeon, Mikko Tuliranta. He's a surgeon, and he was studying at the same time in Strasbourg in France. He told me that there was a neuroanatomy professor in Strasbourg. He said just one sentence. They were studying the nerves where the impulse goes pretty fast, 120 meters per second, according to the structure. All that the professor said was this one phrase. This nerve has been smartly designed. That's all. It was a strong sermon. My friend, who was also an atheist, started thinking about these things. What did the professor say? Designed. He didn't say it evolved. Actually, it is quite interesting that in France, when I was studying medicine for 7 years, not even once was the name of Charles Darwin mentioned. Quite interesting. In the Finnish medical schools, it mentioned every day, morning, night, and in the middle of the day. But in France, never. Why is that? Well, of course, the answer is he was an Englishman, and the French hate the Englishman. But to tell you the truth, you can become a medical doctor without studying neo-Darwinism, which was never taken up in France. Well, of course, we have to be polite. As a former atheist, I must be polite. I must take it easy. I don't want to give you ready-made answers. I want to encourage you to be critical and to think yourselves, because we are now in the age of the computer things. I've been working 40 years as a medical doctor. Now I work in the computer medicine. I work as a consultant by computer, and this is something new. In the countryside in Finland, we don't have enough doctors, but we have lots of nurses. And we have units where a nurse checks the patient, takes the laboratory tests, sends to my computer the picture, the test results, and then she phones me. And we discuss, can we take care of this patient? I can telefax the prescription to a pharmacy, or if it's not our case, so we will delegate the patient to a hospital. This is quite new. Maybe you have that also in Estonia. But I'm working in a company which is developing this new type of medicine. Because I must say, after teaching medical students for 20 years, that there are very good students, but there are also some students who think they know everything. They are the most dangerous ones. I remember as a young doctor, I was working at the clinic. I was thinking, I know everything now. But that wasn't a good thing, because you'll see later on why. But let's go into this. Can you open up the... My first point is man, you and I, are we over-designed? Is there too much design in man for the neo-Darwinian mechanism to explain? This is an interesting question, because we will go to the question, is there design in nature? Is there over-design in nature, like anticipation for something? Or is there luxury design in nature? That is also an interesting thing. Is there luxury design in nature? These are new concepts. Is man just an updated chimpanzee, as an atheist scientist recently said in Finland, that we're nothing but updated chimpanzees? That's, I cite from him. As the naturalist atheists say, we have evolved from quarks, and we had a common ancestor with chimpanzees 7 million years ago. This is today thought as the truth, a fact. And it's interesting that once some scientific hypothesis or a theory gets the position of a fact, it is sheltered from critique. And if a scientific hypothesis or a theory is sheltered from critique, then I would say it is no longer science. It's a faith system. Because as we study science, we have to be very humble. I've been in the field for 40 years, and I was working in the 73 at the clinic where women were giving birth to babies. And at that time, if a woman had a risk of spontaneous abortion, the medical practice at that time was that she should drink lots of cognac 3 times a day. And for the ladies who couldn't drink cognac, they would drink whiskey. Because we thought this will have some effect on the brain and prevent miscarriage, but this is of course nonsense. And we have to be humble, because all the medicines that I used in the 70s, you don't use them anymore, because many of them are dangerous. We have all the time new medicines, new ideas, and it is a good thing. The modern medicine is very fine, and I recommend and I use it all the time. I have nothing against scientific study, but we're approaching the truth. But to get to the truth, will we ever do that? That is an interesting thing. Because when I was an atheist, I said to the believers that you believers in design or in God, you're hiding your God in the gaps of what we don't know. But we will soon fill those gaps, and you have nothing to say, your God will disappear. But today the thing has changed, that the more we know, the better we know what we don't know. When knowledge increases linearly, what we don't know increases exponentially. This is the thing today. Well, has man's origin been proven beyond doubt by empirical scientific study? That's a good question. Or is the academic version of man's origin just a naturalistic creation myth? You can think about that. Or has modern empirical science shown that the textbook claim of man's origin is false? That's a good question. The naturalists say that 500 million years ago, a curious organism swam in the sea. All vertebrates, fishes, dinosaurs, birds, mammalians, and finally men evolved from these descendants. This was published in Helsingin Sanomat, the main journal in Finland, in its science department recently in June this year. So this is what is taught as a fact, that you and I, we have evolved from this strange creature. So is there a 1% difference between man and chimpanzee? This has been taught as a fact in biology for 40 years at least. So you take any journal, any TV program about nature, any school, any gymnasium, any university, this is brainwashed to everybody's brain that between man and chimpanzee DNA there's just 1% difference. But is this true or not? Well, if it was 1%, that would mean 30 million DNA code nucleotides. You know that DNA is a code, and to get the 1% difference you would need 30 million mutations just for 1%. 1% is a lot. 1% is a huge number. 30 million code changes. What is DNA? DNA is semantic information written in code language and determines a function. Today, when we are studying biology, it is like studying the computers. Everybody knows Bill Gates of Microsoft. Bill Gates said this some time ago, that DNA is like a computer program, but much, much more complicated than Microsoft can do. There's a code, there's a function, there's instructions for building something, but there's also instructions how it functions. So I think the new generation of people who work with computers and program computers, I think they will find it very hard to believe that the 10,000 bio programs, computer programs that helped me give this lecture, and these bio programs work together, integrated, that they have arisen by a Darwinian mechanism. A friend of mine quoted a famous philosopher, I don't now recall the philosopher's name, but he said that science progresses from funeral to funeral. The old guys have to die and the new generation comes and sees that biology is full of bio programs. Well, everybody knows the Morse code, computer code, alphabet A, B, C, D, and the DNA code is 4 letters. Why 4? Why not 2? Why not put 2 letters in there? Wouldn't that be more compact? No. Why do we need 4 letters? We need 4 letters because this world that we live in produces mutations. You cannot have a child today who is better than you. The children have more mutations always than their parents. So that's why biology has extra information. It's called redundancy. There is extra information to protect us from the effect of mutation. I can tell you that this is the biggest scientific mystery today. Where did the bioprogram language come from? Because there's a lot of choices. A scientist has calculated that how many different sets of molecules you have to make a bioprogram. It's 1.5 times to 10 to the 84th power. It's a huge number. So why this program? This has been studied, they have studied 1 million programs. This seems to be probably the best solution in this fallen world where there's mutations. Like the program anticipates problems, it anticipates mutations. It's being protected from mutations. And another interesting thing is that we have a proofreading mechanism in the cell. Once a cell makes copies very fast. The copying machine of the cell replication, it is like copying 100 Bibles letter by letter in an hour. There is mistakes in copying, but there's a system governed by several enzymes which scans and repairs the mistakes. If there was not a repair system, we would die very fast. Who put the repair, scanning and repair system into place? That is a good question. Because if you have a so-called RNA world, where RNA molecule would spontaneously appear, which is very hard, and make copies of itself, it would lose totally all its enzymatic information in just 10 replications without the proofreading, scanning and correcting system. This is an interesting dilemma for the people who say that information appears spontaneously. If it did, it would disappear very fast without the proofreading and correcting mechanism of the cell. We can come back to that later on if we have time. And remember that DNA cannot be made without DNA. This is a fact. It cannot arise spontaneously because DNA cannot be made without DNA. DNA is a long molecular polymer in your chromosomes. The duplication of DNA is a very complex, exact, and enormously fast process. It is like copying letter by letter. I underline letter by letter, copying 100 Bibles per hour. Only one letter out of 1 billion is copied incorrectly thanks to the repair function. But this requires the cooperation of 12 specific enzymes, molecular machines, to guarantee that we don't die out. I'll come back to this very interesting question later on. Because we accumulate mistakes. There are some medical students here. I can make you happy in your studies by asking how many diseases does man suffer from, which you have to know all. It's been estimated that man suffers from 30,000 different diseases, so good luck in your studies. I was joking, nobody knows them all. That's why we have 50 specialties, so we refer to a specialist. But every generation of 20 years seems to bring with it maybe 100 new diseases. Unfortunately, we're getting worse all the time. But can discuss that later on what that means. Of course, it's not true that the claim that is in the textbooks that the difference is 1%, it's not true. But even this 1% is as many symbols as an encyclopedia of 10 volumes. So the neo-Darwinian mechanism claims that random mutations should write this 10-volume encyclopedia in about 7 million years from our common ancestor with the chimpanzees. Richard Dawkins, who is the most famous atheist today, he has in his book The Blind Watchmaker an example that if you put apes typing on typewriters, do you know what a typewriter is? Because there's some young people here. Typewriter is a computer without computer, it's just a keyword. But Dawkins said that if you put monkeys typing on typewriters on every planet, they will soon type the whole works of Shakespeare. But of course that doesn't work. Even to put 7 letters in the right order would take billions of years and billions of monkeys. So it doesn't write the monkeys don't write the works of Shakespeare. They will never succeed. But you have to ask these questions today. You have to be honest to yourself and ask the difficult questions. My friend, who is a professor of microbiology in the Munich University in Germany, Siegfried Scherer, we just gave out Scherer's new book in Finnish and wrote something ourselves in it. It's called Evoluutio ja biologinen informaatio. It came out 1 month ago. But Scherer said that what he wants to do, he believes in intelligent design as I do, and he said that he just wants to push a little bit a person who has a solid faith in atheism to make him start thinking. Nothing else, just a little bit pushing. He said that when the East Germany fell, from the East Germany came many scientists and talked to Scherer. And they said they were criticizing Scherer for his belief in intelligent design, that somebody has designed nature. So they said to Professor Scherer, but Professor, we are here, we must have evolved. That was the thinking in that time. But things change. The myth of 1%. There are missing DNA sequences between men and chimps. There are orphan genes that only men have. Very interesting chapter, the orphan genes. There's huge differences in the non-coding genes. The 1% has been reached from comparing only about 3% of the DNA which codes for proteins. The 97% is mainly left unexplored until recently. There's differences in the chromosome structures. There's differences in the brain gene expression networks. And Y chromosomes are surprisingly different between men and chimps. This is all scientific study published in the Journal of Science. I put these slides on the homepage of the society, so you can all use them freely if you want. So what is the real difference between a chimp and a man? Now we can compare the transcribed intergenic regions of the human genome to chimpanzee. Despite the proportionally small amount of 1 to 3% of protein coding sequence in the DNA, the genome is almost completely transcribed into RNA. We have, during the last 2 years, started to understand a little bit this stuff. But I must tell you, we know almost nothing about how the DNA functions. For 40 years, medicine study was blocked by the idea that the DNA is 97 junk, that only 3% function. But that was a lack in knowledge. Now we know that the DNA is not 97% junk, at least 80% produces something. And the interesting part is in between the protein coding genes. This was shown in the ENCODE project, which published its results 2 years ago. In the ENCODE project, they found that in between the genes there are 4 million genetic switches. Today, the number has risen to 8 million genetic switches, which regulate how we function. We know very little about this new area. And if I said this junk DNA concept in the medical research for 40 years, I mean that, for instance, type 2 diabetes gene has been difficult to find. It is now thought that maybe the gene or the gene systems or the regulation problems causing type 2 diabetes are in the switches. Maybe, maybe not. But it's a huge area in medicine left unexplored because of neo-Darwinian thinking that is just junk. Who wants to study junk? Now everybody is studying junk. The human genome is extensively transcribed and produces a wide array of long non-coding RNAs that are used in gene regulation, chromatin modification, nuclear organization, and scaffolding for functionally active protein complexes. Of interest in this case in human origins are the long and very long intergenic non-coding RNAs transcribed from genomic regions outside protein coding genes. These linked RNA regions of the genome are more taxonomically restricted than protein coding segments and make logical candidates for research in genetic discontinuity. It's been a funny thing because people say that we are very close to chimpanzees and we are very close to dogs and we're very close to mice and we have maybe forefather with bananas because they look at the protein coding genes. But we all live in this same world and we all breathe oxygen and there of course has to be some metabolic similarity, but that has nothing to do with relationship. This sudden appearance in the mysterious junk DNA area of linked RNA genes in separate lineages, these are intractable problems for the evolutionary paradigm. Where did they come from? Nobody knows. But they don't fit into the neo-Darwinian thinking. What are the results? Short human linked RNA genomic regions, which is less than 600 nucleotides, were only about 75-79% similar to chimpanzee. The larger ones, over 600 nucleotides, were about 71-74% similar. But the very long regions were only 67% to chimpanzee. So you see, it's not 1%, but in some areas of the DNA, the difference is huge, 33%. How can this be explained? That is a very interesting question. This is a serious problem for neo-Darwinism. Of course, in addition to genetic differences, there are other huge differences, like in physiology, in disease spectrum, we don't have the same diseases. Brain development. Brain development is a long story. When does a man have an adult brain? What age? Hope nobody is under 24 yet, because at the age of 24, man has an adult brain. This is why teenagers are like they are. We have special things. Man can outrun an antelope. Walking on 2 feet is a good solution. Somebody said it's a mistake, but it's a very good solution because on the savannah, if we run with an antelope, the antelope will collapse before the man. That's why all the marathon and long distance runners come from Kenya and Ethiopia, because they're good runners. We have muscles used in speech, we have language, culture, we can compose and play. This is the extra luxury over design. We differ from animals by a quantum leap. It is not known which selection pressure would cause all of this. Bias evolution. This you can see all over the place. This started from chimpanzee and we're now here. Back to the machine. But this is funny in the way that we are not getting any smarter even if we have computers. We are getting less intelligent all the time. And this is because of mutations. Our intellect is governed maybe by 2,000 or 3,000 genes, and they have mutations. And we are getting more stupid all the time. Sorry about this, but it includes me also. Think about the people before who built the pyramids. Granite blocks, 2 meters by 2 meters, weighing 60 tons, 100 meters up there. How did they do that? With the tools they had. They were smart. And the same study, which shows that we are getting more stupid all the time, we can study from this, find that when has man been at the cleverest, at the smartest? About 6,000 years ago, according to the study. Well, here's evolution of man and evolution of woman. Here is man and the woman. The differences between men and chimps, this is the key thing. This is the extra design and the over design which separates us from animals, absolutely. I would like you to concentrate on the differences because they are crucial in any discussion. Walking on 2 feet is an excellent solution. It's really a fantastic solution, walking on 2 feet. So why don't elephants walk on 2 feet if it's such an excellent solution? Why only us? It's a beautiful solution. Skillful hands. I told you, here's the most complicated instrument in the whole universe. 58 axles of movement. 58 axles of movement. Cannot be done by engineers. You can't make a hand that plays skateball and make surgery and plays tennis and ice hockey. Can't be done. Speech. I was giving a long speech in the summertime and maybe I was talking too much because I was talking 2.5 hours. They wanted a mega lecture. I'm not doing this yet. But they said that they were praying for me to stop. Because I like this stuff myself, I think it's important. We get the facial communication. Always when I talk, I look at the faces, so I get instant feedback, instantly. So I work a lot with babies as a family doctor. I get these babies who have ear infections, and they hate ugly men in white suits. And when I say at the end of the corridor, Madame Virtanen, please, the baby starts crying already there. So it's red and sweaty and struggling in the mother's lap, and the mother is red and sweaty and struggling, and it's an awful situation. So what do? I don't have language with the baby. I can't talk with the baby. I look at the baby's face for maybe 2 minutes. I start smiling. Baby looks at me suspiciously. I get a nice smile. So I know now I can look into the ear. And usually it works. And the mother says, what happened to it? So I can language with the baby with the face. It's very important. It's very important in the Bible. You can Google the Bible today in the internet. You can put the term face, and it gives you about hundreds of Bible verses talking about the face. As we say, the Aaron's blessing, we ask God to turn His face to us. How important the face is. Another thing about the face, you can immediately tell what your opponent is looking at, because there's the white in the eye. We can immediately tell what you're looking at. You're not looking at my shoes, you're looking at my face. So I can immediately know that. So this is an extra thing that only man has. You go and see a cow on the field, you don't know what the cow is looking at, because there's no whites. That's a communication which is very important. We have this long childhood. Apes, well, they peel bananas and go up in the trees very fast. Our babies, it would be quite practical if you give birth to a baby and the baby would walk home from the hospital. Wouldn't it? But it takes time to learn to master, to learn to speak at least 1 year, to learn to walk at least 1 year, to learn all these extraordinary motor skills that we have takes a long time. So the Darwinist says that this long childhood is an accident, accidental mutation. Oh no, it's no accident, because you need this time to create all the motor waves also in the cerebellum, as you know. But the most important thing is the complex brain. Our brain is incredibly complex. We'll come back to that soon. Walking on 2 feet is not an evolutionary accident that causes back problems. The evolutionist says that man is poorly designed because sometimes man has back problems, and that shows that there is no God, because God would not have created a man with back problems. So this is a really funny thing. I have a friend, Antti, he's a specialist in internal medicine, he's a doctor. So he specializes in nephrology. And he had a severe back problem. And his mother, guess what she did? Antti's mother bought him a chainsaw. A chainsaw. So he wanted to play with the saw. He went into the forest to cut trees, and working with a chainsaw, that is hard stuff. Has anybody tried? You know. His back was healed. He said no back problems after the chainsaw, because the muscles were strong in many ways. So the problem was he was sitting too much. Today we know that sitting kills you. You should not sit at a time more than 2 hours.
Like from the picture, too much water.
Yeah, well, my friend Professor Leisola, I told him that sitting will kill you, Professor. So he went into the shop, he bought an electric table. He's now standing in the work. He throws his chair away, and he can regulate it by a motor lift and go up and down the electric table. So it's dangerous to talk to Professor Leisola, because he does immediately what the doctor orders. But sitting is considered dangerous today. Well, but to go from here to here, this is more than 1%, because you need strong big toes, special ankle, very complicated knee. This region is very complicated. You need this special structure of the spine, and you need to remove the cervical column to the bottom of the scalp, from the neck to the bottom. And at the same time, you need to cut the face, have a straight face, otherwise you don't see your toes. And to top it all, you need a special kind of balance organ. Balance organ is very different in man. So you need all these things to go difference with being chimp and man. This is a huge difference, tens of thousands of mutations. So it's not scientific to claim that here is just 1% of difference. You can see it. And not only men have slip discs. Here's the Mango the bear gets back surgery for slip disc at an Israeli zoo. So it hasn't, walking on 2 feet has not so much to do with a slipped disc. It's another problem. It's funny how the naturalist says today that there's so many problems of design in man, which shows that there's no designer. But all these can be discussed. The knee is very complex. It has 16 different structures to help us stand. Like in the army, we had a very nasty sergeant, which made us stand in attention for half an hour. You can't do that today. But I know it can be done, because I've been standing in attention for a long time. But apes can't do that, because they can't straighten their knee. I don't know into the mechanism of the knee, which is extremely complicated. But it's extremely sophisticated mechanism, and human designers have been unable to produce an artificial knee. I have friends who make artificial knee operations, and it's always a problem because artificial knee is not as good as the one you have natural. Well, you can look at the impossibility of an evolved knee. And look what man can accomplish, dancing on ice. Chimpanzees don't do that. Or have you seen? But this is extreme skill. Look at the hand. We talked about the hand already. To build a robot arm that can do all that the human hand can is very challenging. Who has played tennis? So you need a power grip, and you need to put the ball at the right place. You need a power grip and a precision grip at the same time. You use two systems, power and place the ball at the right place. This is very complicated stuff. You can play many instruments, like a pianist can play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, can remember 10,000 notes, put the fingers 30 different ways on the keyboard. We can play lots of instruments. This is extra design. Quite difficult to explain by the neo-Darwinian mechanism. Put them on the keyboard. Well, the evolutionists explain that, well, this hand evolved in such a way that I've been living in France, and the French speak like this, and I've seen a Frenchman speak. There was a story about a robber who was caught by the gendarmes in France. The police took him to the judge. They put the handcuffs on the poor guy. And the judge was asking questions of this robber. The robber didn't say anything. Why can't you answer me, you criminal? Monsieur, je peux pas répondre parce que il faut ouvrir ces choses. He would have to take away the handcuffs. So then he started talking. I can't talk. But this is a funny thing because the Darwinist has always an explanation for everything. Now there is to explain that why do we do this with our hands? It's because there's a fish that is doing with the fins like this to attract the ladyfishes. So it has evolved from that. I like to read a lot of Darwinistic literature because it's quite interesting. Like, where's the origin of human language? There's this ape who is smacking the lips like. So the scientist, academic world says that speaking has evolved from this ape who did that. Very interesting. When we speak, we use up to 100 different muscles. The throat is built for speaking, respiration, and eating. This is where the Darwinists say that this is poorly designed because if you talk when you're eating, you can die. I say to them, didn't your mother say that talk only when your mouth is not filled with food? But the Darwinists said that if we would design man, we would put there two mouths. One for speaking and one for eating. So very interesting to see people with two mouths. Would that be pretty? No. But that would make singing very hard, because when we sing we need to put the air in the lungs and sing. So the Darwinian solution with two mouths wouldn't be very nice looking. I don't know how it would work, but it's an optimal design. We speak up to 100 different muscles, and it takes at least 1 year to learn to speak. This is the extra design. We have been designed for communication, and we can even speak up to 200 words per minute. In daily routines, we can use up to 100,000 words. Pianist can remember 10,000 notes. We have an excellent memory. The record of pi decimals, everybody knows what pi is. So a Japanese man remembers 42,109 decimals of pi. It's called savant. That's a syndrome. There's a guy in the United States, you can ask him, what did you do on the 12th of May 1974? He tells you. He can remember what he did every day of his life. That just gives an illustration of what we have in here. But that can be also a sickness. It's called savant. And these people can have problems because of super memory like that. Look at the face. 50 face muscles, 24 muscles under the skin produce our facial expressions. Paul Ekman, the University of California, has estimated that hundreds of thousands of expressions can be produced. I have a friend who makes passport photographs, and all the customers complain that my passport photo is not good. I'm not satisfied. Because the face is living all the time it's changing. So to get the right picture is very challenging. It's almost impossible to get a satisfactory passport photo. So it shows that something is happening here in the face, which is very important. 25% of the motor cortex in the brain here is wired for making expressions. So it must be very important. Now look at the wonderful faces. I mean, this is beautiful. Man is beautiful. You are beautiful. Beautifully designed. Look at these children who are having fun. Think that if there was 4 chimpanzees here, it wouldn't be so nice. I mean, this is beautiful. God has created extra beautiful luxury. Look at, here's some samples of face expressions. Look at this old guy marrying this young beautiful lady. She doesn't look so happy. And he is kissing her on the cheek, not on the mouth, because she wouldn't maybe like that. But look at these two. They are so happy. You can see radiating happiness. And look at this. He's not so satisfied. This expression is universal. You can find it from all cultures. Baby who is not so happy. And look at this. Obama is having a good time with the Danish Prime Minister. They're really having. But look at the face. She is not happy at all. Look at what the face can accomplish. You don't need to put any text in it. This was published in the New York Times. And what did they write? Is Obama's marriage breaking? Just this. So you see, God has, I'm using the word God, but the master designer has put something extra and important here. Facial communication. Remember that for smiling, only 4 to 6 muscles are needed. For frowning, up to 20 are needed. So it's economical to smile. So smile a lot to save energy. This is how the Darwinists explain. This is how we got our faces over 400 million years ago from this. So take it or leave it, but they always have an explanation. This is another explanation for the beautiful face. It came from this fish. But look at how it's wired in the brain. 25% is for hand expressions, hand use. 25% sign language. 25% for this wonderful instrument. 25% for facial expressions, and 25% for speaking. So look, 75% is wired for communication. That is special extra which separates us from the animals. If you draw it, it would be like these big hands and big mouth. But this tells us something important. Chimps communicate with 66 gestures. It has been measured recently, 2 months ago. So there is a difference which is more than 1%. So you start to think about these things. Is it credible to claim for all school children and university students that the difference between man and chimp is just 1%? Is it intentional? Is it brainwashing? Or what is it? I don't know. But it's not correct scientifically. And brain weight does not determine intellect. Whales and elephants have much bigger brains by weight. Our brain cells are connected by synapses, which can be compared to microprocessors and memory sticks. Your brain contains 1 million billion synapses. The specific structure of the molecular switches of the synapses determines intellect. This is how it's thought today. You have 100 billion switches 10 to the power 20 in your brain. You have actually this capacity in your brain. The genes that make our brain develop are very different from animals. Is there somebody who has made at home illegal electric repairs, like putting some wire in the wrong place? So if you was to assemble the human brain, one connection per second, 24 hours a day, to assemble your brain would take 34 billion years. So it's this complicated. And the system governing this is found in the junk DNA, probably. We don't know, but it is probably there. In just one fertilized egg cell, there is instructions for this. This is huge. Today you can put your favorite passport photo in the form of DNA molecule. It is conserved better than in a memory stick, because DNA can probably be conserved 10,000 years. It's safer. It costs a lot of money, but you can put your favorite poem or your picture. Today you can load it into DNA. I was having dinner with the Oxford University mathematics professor John Lennox, who was visiting Finland. So we went to a Finnish restaurant and he wanted to eat some Finnish food. So I said that let's take the Santa Claus deer food, but on one condition. If you eat the Santa Claus food, you must not tell your children or grandchildren that you have eaten Santa Claus deer. So when they went to Lapland to get the deer, so we had lots of time and we were calculating that how many books could you fit into 1 gram of DNA. You take 1 gram of DNA molecule, how many books would you stored into 1 gram of DNA. Give me a figure. How many books can you put there? The mathematics professor did that, I didn't do it.
Maybe 1,000?
Million.
70 billion. This tells us something. You know, we have 2 million species on this planet. The instructions of construction and operation of all species on this planet would fit there, and lots of room would be left over. So this is the nanotechnology that we are looking at. We understand very little how it operates, but it's real nanotechnology. In addition to this, there are certain areas of the human brain which are markedly larger than in animals. And computers are simple when compared to man's brain. This came out from Stanford University. That's the address where you can read more. The scientists at Stanford University said that there is a bigger neural network in the human brain than in all of the world's computers and information networks put together. This is unbelievable stuff. In the human brain, there is more capacity than in the information networks and computers of the world put together. And this is quite recent study. Professor Smith at Stanford developed a new way of studying the human brain. And these are his results. That is incredible. I mean, now to say still that just 1% difference between man and chimpanzee, this is not fair. You can find more information on this stuff on creation.com, ICR.org. And here's about 1,000 scientists who are critical of the Darwinian thinking. You can Google this, Dissent from Darwin.org. There's 1,000 scientists who put their name in there. They don't think that this complexity that we see in nature can be created by mutations and natural selection. They are critical of that. And there's 1,000 of them now. All are PhDs. All are PhDs. Here's an interesting name, Jim Tour. He's one of the 10 top biochemists in the world. He's a Jew. And you can look at this site. Jim Tour is explaining that he doesn't believe that the Darwinian mechanism can create anything new structure or function. But Jim Tour is interesting because he says that if you think like me, if you're critical, so shut up. If you want to have a career, don't mention it. Because if you say it openly, you will get kicked out of the university or any research institute. This is very dangerous, as you will see. There's a movie made about this. It's a Ben Stein. Ben Stein is also a Jew. He made a movie called Expel, No Intelligence Allowed. It's a very good movie that scientists who have been kicked out of their job because they said that there is intelligent design in nature, they got kicked out immediately. So the movie is very good. Here's another interesting person, Anthony Flew. Anthony Flew was the icon of the atheists for a long time. He was the most respected atheist in the world, Anthony Flew. But when he took a look at the data we have about design, he started to believe in the design. And he said this, which I would like you to consider. I have to go where the evidence leads. I have to go where the evidence leads. So think personally, be critical, do not believe today's scientific explanations because they all get old and we go on, which is a good thing, but think personally. And you can, there's a 10-minute talk on YouTube on gym tour, which is very interesting and eye-opening if you look at that. Well, how does the brain function? A Japanese-German research group imitated human brain function with the world's fourth largest supercomputer, which is comparable to 250,000 computers like this on the table. These researchers imitated the function of 1.73 billion neurons, which corresponds to about 1% of brain's neurons, and 10,000 billion synapses that connect them. The goal of this experiment was to simulate what happens in your brain during 1 second. What happens in 1% of your brain in 1 second? Well, this took the computer 40 minutes to do that. This just shows what is happening here. So you can go to the lab site of Stanford Education Smith Lab, and there's beautiful videos on the brain function. And Professor Smith's daughter is a good musician. She has done some melodies in the DVDs. They are very nice. So human brain's complexity is a challenge. The volume is only 1.5 liters. There's thousands of kilometers of axons and dendrites, wires, and these neural pathways connect hundreds of billions of different neurons and supporting cells. Neo-Darwinists have no explanation for this. This is a very tricky question to explain. Why so huge brain? Why so big head? This is a problem when giving birth, as all mothers know. Just, you know, it's a... And 50% of the milk the newborn baby is eating goes to the development of the brain. Why don't children grow so much at 4 and 5 years? Because all the energy is put into the brain. They're supposed to grow. Huge, complex structure. Well, the evolutionists have an explanation for everything. So they have an explanation why man's brain is so big. Evolutionists say brain growth started when man learned how to cook meat. Is there a vegetarian here? So you're in trouble according to this. But in fact, vegetarians, I'm not a vegetarian, but vegetarians have much less Alzheimer's and dementia as meat eaters. Eating vegetables is no problem. Or meat eaters say that we want protein. But vegetables have lots of protein, no problem. But this is a little bit funny because that's all they can say. Our huge brain, which is more complicated than all computers in the world together, started to develop after we learned how to cook meat. I mean, that's not very convincing. Well, show you some electron microscopy of the brain. Here's the synapses. And think that you have 1 million billion synapses, and we don't know so much how they work. And this is Stephen Smith said that brain is so complex that it's hard to believe. This is the professor who found these results. And of course, this is not all. I can give you more, but maybe I'll stop here because there's also the chemistry of the transmitting substances, the hormonal regulation. We know very little about the role of the 100 billion supporting cells in the brain. We have consciousness, which is an interesting thing. Nobody knows what consciousness is. Professor Andrew Huxley, who got the Nobel Prize in Medicine for explaining how the brain works with electricity. He said before he died, Professor Andrew Huxley said that a Nobel Prize winner in medicine. He said that I cannot be an atheist because men have consciousness and there is no scientific explanation for consciousness. Professor Huxley. So maybe I'll stop here because it was meant to be 1 hour and